Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another podcast. I'm Emory Cuzzy and this is Cameron Selby, and we're going to talk today about some team news that's coming out for the NFL teams and just kind of go over some things to look out for as we get closer and closer to the draft. I mean, this is we're in a good time of the year, so lots of different things are happening. We should probably start closer to the top. Some news swirling about the Giants, possibly wanting to go quarterback. I kind of want to see your take on it. And
essentially kind of one of the bigger things that came out that was different than what we anticipated in our first mock is the Giants and their desire to potentially move up or select QB4 at 6 instead of going with the best available receiver or tackle or what have you to improve their team that way. Rich Eisen came out today and was saying that people that he's talked to, that they're just kind of over the Daniel Jones situation, ready to move on. Seems crazy after a 1-year extension. That's kind of one of the big reasons why you're probably going to lose Saquon Barkley this offseason, not extending him and moving forward with Daniel Jones the way they did. But it's a little surprising how quickly it happened. It's one of those situations where either way, you got to improve your team some way, shape, or form. I just didn't anticipate this would be the direction they'd be going.
Right. So I guess another question, what is their best option? What should they do with Daniel Jones? Is it possible to trade? Or because, I mean, his contract is so big, would they?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, he has an early void in 2026.
Okay.
So cutting him, releasing him, it's going to be a heavy cap hit over the next 2 seasons. If you did, obviously your trade value is minimal at best with the current contract, unless you're taking on all the dead money. And typically teams don't like to do that, especially the quarterback position. So we saw another one today officially announced that Russell Wilson, there was speculation, will he be released? They are going to release him once the new league year starts on the 13th. They're going to divvy up his $85 million cap hit over 2 seasons instead of take it all this year to get under the cap a little bit, because they're in a little bit of a pickle with that. But with the Giants, they have a little bit of cap space because they're not really paying as many guys. But I think it's a lot to do with how much J.J. McCarthy's risen. He's really kind of vaulted himself into the clear number 4 at the very moment, at least in the eyes of the NFL circles.
Right.
He still is probably in the second tier pretty steadily with us, but he tested out of the water with his interviewing.
Right.
And like you said in our combine reaction video for the prospects, he just did a lot of things well. And so there's a lot of buzz on him being a top 10 pick. If the Giants are there at 6, it's really hard to imagine him falling past there if everybody stands pat as they are. Now, if the Giants trade into the top 3, probably to New England, to get one of the top 3 that we were discussing, that is in some order is going to go 1 through 3, then that just kind of leaves JJ McCarthy for who's going to get him, who's going to trade up for him, because I would doubt that the Patriots would trade back to not take a quarterback and then take a quarterback. I don't think that they would go that direction when you have the ability to just choose the best guy on your board and just be like, no, you can have the best guy on our board. We're going to go with somebody at 6 and risk somebody trading ahead of us to get that guy, So that's kind of where I am landing on them. It'll be very interesting. That's definitely going to shake up our coming mocks when they do come out. But that was just kind of one of the biggest things that there's not really a lot of pushback or one way or the other. It's kind of seems like it's one direction that's really the avenue that they're going to be taking this offseason. So it'll be very interesting to see where they go from here.
So I guess moving on to the other team that you mentioned, the Broncos, they have the 12th overall pick, and we talked in the previous mock draft 1.0 that they can't really move up. They have no assets to move up. They have
at least into the top 5. Yeah,
right, exactly. So because of the Russ trade, they not only got Russ, and now they're having to pay him for him to not play for them. So I think that that whole situation, the Broncos are just going to have to eat the bullet here or bite the bullet here, and then possibly go quarterback at that 12th spot. Whoever falls to them, it's just not going to be JJ McCarthy. It sounds like so.
Right. Yeah, and kind of another team that we're talking about the quarterback situation. It has a big impact on that range once we get outside the top three, and then even past JJ McCarthy, who's going 5 and 6, because we're pretty confident in the fact that Denver's probably going to be targeting a quarterback early with that first pick because they don't have a second rounder. That it's their only chance to improve that position. But Atlanta, we were very kind of confident that they'd be trading for a veteran or at least going that route instead of the rookie route and upgrading that spot. They've been very vocal about, not really backing Desmond Ridder.
Right.
And so we actually learned over the weekend that it sounds like their plan A isn't Justin Fields after all. It's Kirk Cousins. And that really kind of jumbles things even more so because, we're projecting trades and signings and stuff way too early. And it sounds like they just kind of want to get an established guy rather than a project that they hope turns out. It doesn't sound like Kirk and the Vikings are making a ton of progress on the contract. It sounds it's going to be his last big deal, if anything, coming off an Achilles injury at 36. So going to Atlanta, that is the perfect situation for very, very many of these veteran guys that are just kind of in limbo. But yeah, we were talking with the friends, and it's just like, how much does Atlanta got to give up for Justin Fields? And it's like, well, they're probably going to keep that second pick and go get Kirk or Baker,
right,
or going that route. It sounds like that's what the avenue that they're looking to take, and that just kind of jumbles things up because, say hypothetically they just pull 180 and they're the team that goes after QB4. Say we were talking about with JJ McCarthy, because he's getting legit top 10 buzz. We're not just talking smoke. If he hypothetically just does the Zach Wilson route where he just absolutely flies up boards out of nowhere, and then he just, right before the draft, somebody's like, oh yeah, if he's there, that's who we're going with, and Drake May or Jaden Daniels drops down.
Right.
If you're somebody like Atlanta, maybe that's a little bit of a change of thought.
Yeah.
If you have that kind of idea in your head, that it's like, well, man, we can get one of the top 3 picks in this draft and not have to give up the farm for. So, yeah, I mean, we have them being, the the NFC South favorites,
right,
based on their roster, and going in the veteran route was something that we anticipated. What would your thoughts be on Kirk? That was just kind of one of the out of nowhere stories that we heard.
Well, he's 36. He has, since Achilles tears are actually not as difficult to come back from for quarterbacks. I've kind of learned that since we had so many happen this year,
especially the style of
and he stands in so it's really not that worrisome. It's, of course, it's an injury, a big surgery, but it's not an ACL, it's not some other shoulder injury or something, so I'm a little bit more comfortable with that. He's played great. I really enjoyed the show that he was on and watching him and how he quarterback, and how he holds himself and what he brings for a roster and things like that. The locker room part of it too. So I don't think he's an upgrade at for Atlanta no matter what. But if they go with him and they go with a completely different style of player than that they have on their roster, I think that actually improves them a lot more than. I think Justin Fields would have improved them, but without that second pick, where they can also improve their roster even more, I think that Kirk makes a lot more sense personally. I think Russ even makes more sense than Justin Fields personally, because of the fact that he will take the minimum for veteran quarterback, things like that. Everything we're going to do today, I feel like, is going to be centered around quarterback for the most part, because we have the top 3 teams. Now the Giants, Atlanta, Denver, Minnesota, and the Raiders all need quarterbacks, and they're on the top 13.
The Raiders are so interesting to me just because we've heard buzz from all the teams that need quarterbacks, except for the Raiders.
Yep.
And obviously, maybe it's a short term, but they're probably not in the long term going Aiden O'Connell.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're at 13. They're in prime position to move up if the top 10 just gets shaked up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. We've seen some things that are just like, Justin Fields just isn't having the market that we thought. And so if Pittsburgh's gonna stay with Kenny Pickett, which it sounds like they're not gonna bring in. They're going to bring in a veteran,
Right.
but they're not going to bring in a veteran to start,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. It'll be a Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco-esque
Mm-hmm.
guy that's just spot starter if Kenny goes down or just is not panning out. We have something to be competitive with the roster that we have.
Yeah.
And so, that being said, Justin Fields, obviously, if the Chicago stays at 1, he's not going to be on that roster.
Right, of course.
At the time of the draft. We will know before the draft if he will be gone. It's not like they're going to wait until after the draft to trade him.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, who's left? And we said second round projection for the possibility of him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Denver doesn't have the money to extend him, and they don't have a second round pick. The Raiders have money. They've got the second round pick. They pretty much have all their assets. And so we know that they haven't drafted the best early on, and they need somebody. And when we've come out with the odds, and we were talking earlier in previous videos about Russell Wilson or Justin Fields being the favorite to go here or there, like I was just like, Raiders, not a bad bet, because they're just not being talked about.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if you just kind of run out of options, it'll be very intriguing. To see if that's the direction that they go that way, or if they just get really aggressive out of nowhere and they're the team that trades up into the top 5.
Well, if I do believe, because the only buzz that I've heard really about the Raiders is Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels. Well, it's not realistic to get Jaden Daniels prior to the news about JJ McCarthy. Because if JJ McCarthy somehow breaks into the top 3, which I think is insane, but it's definitely being talked about, possibility. If he goes 3, and I expect, and we talked about this earlier, Jaden Daniels has a better chance of falling out of the top 3 than Drake May to me. So Jaden Daniels falls out of the top 3, and he's sitting there at 5, or even 4. We might even decide. I don't know that Arizona wants to give up that pick if Marvin Harris is there. I wouldn't personally, but if we're probably making that call, But 5, trading with the Chargers to get in front of the Giants. Okay, that's possible to me. I know we're AFC West, whatever. Neither of us. We both need to improve our rosters as teams.
I mean, it's not
so
out of the realm of usually you don't see in-division trades for established players,
right?
But you'll see trades, and if you are the Chargers at 5, you need tackle help. One will be there at 13, and you get probably 2 additional firsts. Be like, okay, Raiders, you can gamble on your guy, but we're gonna use those assets well because we draft well. You don't, and it'll be okay. We saw in a previous draft, Devontae Smith got traded up. Philly swap with Dallas. Dallas got extra 3rd-round pick for him, and then they end up with Michael Parsons. So it's not crazy to see within division trades in the draft. It's even crazier when, like, example of TJ Hawkinson going from Detroit to Minnesota. You don't ever see those kinds of trades. But it'll be interesting because, like you said, if there's some kind of scrambled mess after the top 3 and JJ McCarthy barges in there might be the best 5th overall pick that we've seen in some time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that will just kind of shake up everything.
I have a question though. What if everybody falls off? What is Justin Fields' trade value? Like if say all these teams decide like, hey, we want to do a different route. Atlanta, they just decided they're going to go, Kirk Cousins possibly, Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh. You've got Denver, can't have him, doesn't matter. All these guys up front, they're not going to go for him. I mean, I don't think the Giants will, because they would have to pay 2 quarterbacks a huge amount of money. If the Raiders are just the last team that didn't do anything, could they get him for cheaper than a second rounder?
I think that's right in the ballpark.
Okay.
That was exactly what I was thinking, because I mean, when you pre-announce or there's a predetermined decision of what direction you're going,
Mhm.
teams are going to lowball you because they know he won't be back.
Right.
I brought the example before of Amari Cooper, how right before free agency, Jerry Jones is like, he won't be back. And that was before the market just went out
Mhm.
crazy. And all of a sudden, they got a 6th-round pick, whereas Marquise Brown went for a first, and A.J. Brown went for a first.
Right.
And
Of course.
we can debate on who he's better than. The fact of the matter is, at the very least, you should have gotten a 2nd-round pick for a guy in his prime,
Mhm.
and you didn't. So with the Chicago, it's not as much of a we don't want Fields back like a Zach Wilson or a Mac Jones, who basically both of those respective teams are moving off of those
Right.
guys.
Of
Like
course.
we've heard New England, they're kind of playing, it sounds like, after opening up over $100 million in cap space, is going to be, we're going to trade Mac Jones for what we can. We're going to bring in a veteran, and then we're going to draft a quarterback.
Mhm.
It sounds like that's the direction that they're going to go. With Zach Wilson, obviously, they don't expect him to be back, and they'll have to deal him in some way, shape, or form. With Justin Fields, it's not that, oh, we don't want him back. It's just the I guess opportunity
Yeah.
with the other direction that you go with Caleb Williams, coupled with the salary cap situation, all that. It's just a better situation for us. It's a better fit for us, and we're probably gonna go that route. But even if it's a mutual, it's okay, no ill will, you're still saying to other teams, I'm not going that way. And like
Yeah.
I said previously, this isn't going to take long to move off. We're not going to wait till the draft to be like, oh, where's Justin Fields going to go tonight to be traded? Who's
Mhm.
going to move? No, his fate will probably be decided this month at
Right.
some point. And it's going to come down to what's the market, and on top of that, you got to pay for him. So I think it'll be something along the lines of a similar thing with Calvin Ridley to an extent, where right now, if the Jags re-sign Calvin Ridley, in addition to giving him the money, because his value only went up because Mike Evans has
Yeah.
announced he's re-signing with Tampa. He's the first kind of domino to fall in free agency. With Calvin, if they re-sign him, they also have to trade their 2nd-round pick to Atlanta.
Mhm.
And then I believe it's a 4th if they don't. So, with that being said, we're kind of starting to see some more conditional picks take place. We saw with Aaron Rodgers where, they would have had to give up their first, but
Right,
he
of
didn't
course.
play enough time, so they give up their 2nd-round pick. Things like that, or like if we sign him into a season-long extension,
Mhm.
like you're going to have Justin Fields for another 2 years, but it's conditional on if he's our long-term answer. So
Right, of course.
it would make sense for me in the range of like, we're going to give up a conditional 3rd in 2025. And if we re-sign him, it'll be as high as a 1st, or you could do, snap percentages like we've seen with Rodgers.
Right.
I think that makes the most sense for Chicago to maximize their value, not to get a second this draft.
Mhm.
And because you have 2 top 10 picks, another high 2nd-round pick, you're not really in need of high draft capital yet. But pushing it off, you always can get higher value because people are gambling on the future.
Right.
So, like we see in basketball, for example, the Spurs got a top 1 protected pick from the Boston Celtics in 2028 for
Mhm.
Derek White last year. And if Boston just completely screws this up and just tanks and just blows it up, that could be the best thing in the world.
Mhm.
But if you were trying to get something in next year's draft, you probably wouldn't have gotten a 1st-round pick for Derek White. But because you did, you got a very little protection because it's way in the future.
What?
So I think we're starting to see more futures trades
Yeah.
with the NFL.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the direction I see with the market being the way it is.
I think a small example is the Houston Texans this year,
Mhm.
betting on themselves.
Exactly.
They went from they traded for Deshaun, and then the trade for DeAndre Hopkins. and they were both first rounders. Well, they bet on themselves, and they got the better pick at the end of the day because they played better than they beat Cleveland in the playoffs to vault themselves above them, and so Arizona actually only got the 27th pick in that trade. So
Will
yeah,
Anderson trade.
yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, Will Anderson, not
yes.
DeAndre Hopkins. I'm sorry, but yeah. So I mean, it just depends on how you. I just think the Raiders could do something like that, get a third for him.
Yeah,
Or do you
I
send a
think
third
it'll be
for him
something
and
along the
do that?
lines of conditional pick, because on top of getting the asset, you also have to invest in the asset.
Right.
And so that's what kind of takes the value down a little bit on top of the small market. So an incentive laden deal in the future is probably something that I would go if I was Chicago. Because if you just kind of play hardball and say, oh, we're not going to trade him for anything less than X, then you're just going to not get any traction.
Right.
And then you're going to have a very drama laid situation with Caleb and Justin. And you just don't want that. You don't want the guy that's obviously the guy to be there with the guy that wants to be the guy that should have been the guy that probably would have been the guy if you weren't the first overall pick.
Right. If you didn't have Carolina's pick.
You just don't.
Yeah, you have someone else's pick too. It's not even your own. It's not so much like they went 7-10. They weren't the 2-15 team. So, yeah, absolutely. So let's move on. I think there's another big free agent that's not a quarterback, in Christian Wilkins. I don't think there's any way he's going back to Miami at this point. So,
they announced that they're not intending to tag him by the deadline tomorrow. So it sounds like he's going to be a UFA and probably the first or second most prioritized free agent to me, just because the equivalent of being one of the best in his position, on top of that being in his absolute prime. You don't see very many all-pro caliber players at their position enter the free agency.
Right.
And without having to bid against the team that wants them, because normally if teams let them explore, it's just like, all right, test your market, we'll match whatever it is. If the thing, but Miami don't have the money, so he's probably going. So it'll be very interesting to see who I guess takes a gamble on him. Not even really a gamble. Yeah. It's just you're improving your roster immensely. It's a great locker room guy, great leader, team captain. Like I said, the only nitpicks that I've had about him is just sometimes the stupid penalties. But you can live with that, with the upside that he has, and so
he completely changes your D line by himself, which is something that you just can't. Like the Chargers, if they could sign him, like they have issues with stopping the run. They have great pass rushers. They have great everything else. Can't stop the run. If they had the money to pay him, he'd be the perfect fit. He'd help them. He would basically eliminate that situation, and then their defense would be that much better. It's one of those things. Like these guys, Aaron Donald's, these interior Chris Jones's, who's also a free agent this year. They can help change the aspect of how the D-line works. And so that's going to be something crazy, because we do have Justin Matabuke, who is also a free agent. His stock is probably going to drop a little bit price-wise with Christian being on the market. So I think someone might get a steal with him too. So it's going to change a little bit of everything here.
Right. So. Yeah, and then a couple of the next talking points. Guys under contract that may or may not be on the team going forward with the guys that they had. We look at L'Jarius Sneed, who just got tagged. I've heard a lot of things where it's just like it's very likely that they move off from him, but they're trying to franchise and get something out of him, which is very smart business. But it's going to leave a hole at corner. So that's one. You see another one, which is very interesting, but Green Bay, who doesn't have a ton of cap space, a lot of young guys, they're already losing AJ Dillon and coming out that kind of they're playing hardball with Aaron Jones a little bit and kind of setting their territory of, if you don't take a pay cut, we're going to release you. He still, if he does, he vaults into one of the three best running backs. I think I would take Aaron Jones over Derrick Henry at this point in their careers. For sure. At least you have another 3-ish years of Aaron Jones being a quality, at the very least 1B.
Right.
Whereas Derrick Henry really is I think one of the biggest risks as an investment, at least in the short term, because somebody's going to look at the name being one of the best of our generation and paying him a pretty penny, and then him just not panning out the way it should.
Right.
I expect, or I could just see like a Philly like team that's trying to retool and get back to, after a disappointment, and then load up, and then on paper it's like, oh yeah, they're back, and then it just doesn't fit.
It would be cool to see Derrick Henry in a Philadelphia jersey. It's just not going to be worth the price, though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, not for a Cowboys fan, but
no.
It's just not going to be worth the price.
Yeah, it just won't be.
So that's the problem.
Yeah, and so and then the last one, of all the receivers kind of starting to look to get extensions, one of the surprise names that came out was Brandon Ayuk. How they're going to work on an extension, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they might move on from him,
right?
Via trade. Obviously, they have his rights for the next year, at the very least. And then you got to play hardball with the franchise tag. But he's just due for an extension, and so now it's like they can afford everything that they can, but by the time that they got to pay him, Brock Purdy's no longer on that deal. So you can't keep everybody, and so he'll be a very interesting name. I guess what are your thoughts on that regarding him being the odd man out? Like, if you were to move on from somebody in that skill group, would he be the guy?
Personally, I think at this point, yes. But at the same time, he's the youngest. He's the guy that has the most. He fits Purdy's style of play, and we talk about that all the time. We talk about how Debo kind of took a step back when Purdy became quarterback, and that's because Debo is a catch the ball and take it for 50 yards, and he just makes big plays, and he's a splash play guy, while Ayuk runs really good routes, catches the ball, but doesn't necessarily have the yak and do that type of stuff. So they're different. McCaffrey, Kittle's cheaper. That's my big thing with him. You don't have.
He's at a position where it's just it's not going to balloon. Yet, like the receiver position is, because we're seeing guys flirting with $30 million now in guarantees per year. Justin Jefferson and Jamar are the two best receivers in football, and they're both due for extension. So, like, they're going to completely reset the market on top of what Tyreek Hill and others that just did within the last few years. But at the same time, even though he is the youngest, he does have the most trade viability.
Right.
Because I don't think that you're getting a first for Debo. Obviously, with Christian McCaffrey, he will age out eventually. He still has a few years left. George Kittle is an older version of the 28, I believe that he is, because of all his injuries. So with Brandon Ayuk being fresh 25, not a ton of injuries, you could possibly flirt with getting your first round pick that you invested in him from some needy team. Not this year. Based on the class that you have, why would you do that?
Yeah.
In the draft a couple years ago, when we saw Marquise Brown, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, there wasn't a ton of receivers. It wasn't a strong class. After, I believe that was the Garrett Wilson class with Ayuk in London.
Yeah.
So after them, which all went 10, 11, 12, there was a big gap. And so, the first round, everybody was trading their first round picks in early seconds for these guys. You don't have that this year because you got 10 to 12 that will be there between 20 and 40 that you could just take your pick. If you're one of those teams like a Buffalo, like, there's no point if you're moving off of Stephon Diggs to trade another first round pick for Brandon Ayuk, hypothetically. It doesn't make sense when you could go young at the position.
Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell.
Exactly.
Any of those guys.
I would probably doubt that he does get moved, but I don't necessarily guarantee that he's going to sign an extension anytime soon. And so it could get a little cloudy. And so we'll just kind of see as we enter training camp, because he might be a name to keep an eye on, to hold out. And then after all this draft is solved, off free agency, and there's no big names on the market, he could be one that just kind of comes out of nowhere and somebody, throws a line at.
Right. So yeah, let's talk about the NFC East. I won't start with the Cowboys because I know how that's going to be a great ending to this one. But we just saw Jason Kelce announced his retirement today.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is definitely a sad, hard thing because he's such a big figure in the sport.
He is such a just football player.
Football, absolutely. Yes.
Like he is, if you were starting your team and you got every other position figured out and you're just like, I just need a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is one of the first people that jumps out to me of like, let's get that guy.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
he's just steady, durable, great leader, fun guy to be around, loyal, all that stuff. And it just broke my heart. I watched his entire retirement press conference at 40 minutes and how it's just so hard for him to get through that. This isn't a Tom Brady thing where he's making a post and he might come back. No, that's a man of just, he's broken down because he knows this is it.
How important it is and how much it means to him and his
and
family too. It's a whole, of course you have his brother, but his wife, she's definitely, she is Philly. Like she wouldn't even wear a Kansas City jersey.
Exactly.
Said she wore a Cincinnati jersey where they went to college because she's like, this is it.
I can't wear another NFL.
Yeah, nothing else. And I'm all about that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he's definitely going to be missed. Fortunately for the Eagles, it's not a significant position to replace. His leadership will leave a massive void. And because of their collapse, usually people that can help turn that around very quickly and not let it get even worse is great leadership.
Right.
They do have some good veterans still. We expect Fletcher Cox to return short term. Brandon Graham is back for his final season. Lane Johnson,
right, of course,
on his last legs. Those are good leaders, but I don't know if they had the voice, the vocal leadership that Jason Kelce had. So it'll be interesting to see how they look. Obviously, no tush push next year, and on top of that, the people or the person that's leading the charge isn't there either. So it's just not a great loss for Philly. It's easier to replace that type of position, but I think it's going to leave a larger, stain on trying to rebound next year than people might make it out to be.
Yeah, I wonder though, who will step up? Who was going to be the guy that becomes the new voice? They have a guy, in Landon Dickerson, who could be the next voice. And I think, he might move to center. He might take over. He might change numbers. It might be that whole thing,
Right.
He might just try to be like, I'm the new, legacy type of thing.
Exactly.
And
they could
awesome.
He has center experience too, because we thought he was going to be a center coming out, and then Philly drafted him because he was the best player available. He fell because of injuries, and he's panned out. He's been a very good player. What if they just left him? That would be a smart decision to me. So, I mean, there's ways to replace that. Center is a very expendable position. We've seen tackles be a tackle their entire life in college and then move to center. We've seen guards move to center. They're pretty interchangeable. So getting a good player, they've always drafted linemen well. They've always had very solid lines. 2 straight years, number 1 offensive line. The captain's gone. Got to replace him. Can they is probably going to be the biggest question. But that was a tough watch. Like I said, as much as I am a Cowboys fan, I'm a football fan at heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you see one of your favorite type of guys leave the sport, it's just tough to stomach.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to a different team and a different captain. Pair of captains, actually. Guys that have been there, have done their thing, and so the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Leighton Vander Esch is going to retire.
Yeah.
It's very understandable. He's had so many injuries, so many things that have gone on with him. He definitely has left his mark though while he's been there. He had, been part of the best linebacker duo in the league at one point. And so this is, of course, it's sad, but it's more understandable. Like we can stomach it better because of the injuries rather than the Kelce situation.
That's just another unfortunate one. I mean, he and Sean Lee to me are just kind of synonymous with one another. Just like the guy, they just do their jobs and they just come from nothing and just don't look the fastest. Obviously, they're different sizes, but Leighton Vander Esch didn't even play 11-man football until he went to college, and then becomes a first-round linebacker prospect. And defensive as a rookie just was lights out.
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of struggled with the lingering neck injuries, which was his kind of red flag coming out. And then he was all healthy. He was doing his thing. And then Michael Parsons just gets pushed into him while he's got his head down.
Yeah.
And then that's all she wrote. It's really, really unfortunate. Sometimes that's how the game goes.
Mm-hmm.
But, very, very good football player. And a lot of the problem with at the very end of the season when they just couldn't stop the run, they couldn't make tackles, they had safeties playing linebacker. Big part of that was just because their one true linebacker that they have on their entire roster wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he was, he was a captain, but he wasn't the vocal leader.
Mm-hmm.
But he was such an energy guy. That was just great to have around. So he'll be missed. They need to replace him with an actual linebacker. Maybe Demarion Overshawn comes off his ACL. He didn't even get to play as a rookie, but he was one of the biggest, standouts in preseason. He was
Right.
making plays left and right, tears his ACL. Because of modern medicine and stuff, and how early the injury was, I expect him to be back full strength very early. That doesn't mean that he's going to pan out like he hopefully can. But the big problem that I have with what we've heard this weekend is it sounds like they're going to let Tyron Smith walk. And it's not because of anything other than it sounds like they lowballed him, which does not sit well with me because he has never been one of the highest paid tackles. When he had his first extension, he actually signed an 8-year deal, I believe. And he restructured it about 3 or 4 times and was never the highest paid tackle and just constantly took discounts. And then last year, actually took a pay cut without turning money into signing bonus or anything, took a significant pay cut because he acknowledged, I have not been healthy and I have not panned out for you guys. So I'm going to show you I still have what it takes to be, a top left tackle in this league. And then he was the best left tackle in football this year.
Mm-hmm.
More than Trent Williams.
Right.
More than any tackle you can think of. Number 1 PFF grade.
Yep.
And lights out. And now it's his last true year to get a contract. And sounds like they were trying to play smart and be like, oh, well, what you did for us before, we kind of need that again.
Yeah.
And it's just not great business to do that to guys who have been loyal to you. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer to me. And to see him walk out the door is very frustrating. I want to see him go somewhere because he will be highly prioritized by all these tackle-needy teams. But yeah, it really upsets me, especially when you get sound bites of, we're going all in. We are going to take this loss in stride, this embarrassing loss, and we're going to go all in because time is now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that when you let one of the best players on your team walk out the door for nothing.
Best players in football.
Best players in football. And so that's my big problem with it. Obviously, people are going to be like, oh, tackle is the priority need in the draft. No, it's not, because you drafted your tackle 2 years ago. Tyler Smith, he was an all-pro guard. He's going to move out back. That would be my anticipation. But yeah, it's not a great start to the offseason. You don't get any cap relief by letting him walk.
Right.
So the cap situation that you're in, you still got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it just does not sit well.
Well, the cap situation is try to figure out a way to get your quarterback to have less money on his contract this year. Zach Martin.
Obviously,
those guys. So.
He's going to be due for an extension soon.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have this deja vu 3 years later all over again with him getting an extension.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he was one of the few in history to be tagged twice at the position. He gambled on himself, and it worked out for him twice. He has all the leverage. He cannot be tagged again, and he's going to reset the market and probably get about $60 million annually. We can debate on whether or not he's worth it, but at the same time, salary cap's boomed, and that's the direction where all these quarterbacks are going. He's just next up.
Yeah,
and we saw about 4 years ago, everybody, including myself, was like, you can't pay him $30 million. But then 2 years later, he's not even a top 10 paid quarterback because Joe Burrow got extended, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar,
Right. Of
Burrow,
course.
all these guys, Tua. And so these guys are getting extended. It's going to continue. It's a never-ending cycle. We're eventually going to have a $100 million a year quarterback because that's how important the position is.
Mhm.
It's the hardest position to play in sport. So I just have a problem with the way they're going about it. And I think Dallas is in for a rude awakening in the near future.
Yeah, it's hard to watch guys that do everything right, and then they're the ones that get the short end of the stick and get screwed because they are special talents, all pro, multiple time all pro, Hall of Famer, most likely, like you said, and so yeah, I just I hope he goes somewhere that can give him the money he deserves, and then can also, not lose to Green Bay in the first round, or things like that. Like go somewhere because he's going to get paid by. He's not going to go somewhere that isn't going to win.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go to a team that's like ready to go possibly win a Super Bowl. So
yeah,
there it is.
And
Here
kind
we
of
go.
in a comparison,
Detroit.
10.
Whoa.
We looked 10 years ago. Best player we've had in 25 years, DeMarcus Ware, was a Hall of Famer. Should have been first ballot. It was one of the biggest robberies. But 2013, third straight 8-8 season, and we need to create cap room. And he became a cap casualty. Mm-hmm. And he still had a lot in the tank. Started having some injuries, and they had to let him go. It was upsetting as a fan, but I loved the way he finished his career on top. Mm-hmm. Went to the Super Bowl, was the perfect 1B to Von Miller, who was the best player in football for about 3 years defensively, which might be controversial, but it was warranted.
At the top of the mountain.
At the time. Right. So the difference is this time, like I said, they gained nothing. You only lose by letting him walk out the door for nothing. You're going to get a compensatory pick in the 3rd, 4th round range next year. That doesn't change the fact that you say that you're going to do what it takes.
Right,
and
of course.
If you do what it takes and you talk about Dak the way you are, what you do is you extend him now. And that $59 million cap hit that's making you over the cap right now gets translated down to about 15.
Right.
And then signing bonus, you have 5 years to work with to pay that contract. And then at least in the prime of Dak, you have the best shot to win. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they're doing the opposite of that. So they've been great drafting over the last decade plus, one of the best teams at drafting. But a lot of times they just make the wrong investments. And when they make the wrong investments, it's a year too long or a year too late before they make the decision that they should. Mm-hmm. And I'm just tired of the Jerry Jones sound bites. I don't want to hear a word about we're going all in anymore after that. They will not make it to the Super Bowl. I will not be picking them to win the division based on the trend they're going. I would take Washington over them based on the way it is. And that is saying something because they're the 2 overall pick this year. But based on Washington's new ownership group, a lot of happy buzz. Dallas, disappointing season. And it sounds like they're just going to do more of the same.
Yeah, opposite sides of the salary cap. Mm-hmm. Opportunity is in one area and other sides not creating the opportunity. Like you said, you extend Dak, you save $45 million, you extend DeMarcus Lawrence, who is needs to get paid, deserves to be paid.
Well, I mean, he's already top of the thing, but right now he needs to get extended, mm-hmm. and extending somebody that is a high salary cap that cuts it in half at the very least. That's mm-hmm. how contracts work.
Yeah,
and so that's somebody that needs to do. That's probably a move that they have to make now mm-hmm. to help get under the cap. But yeah, it's it just I'm just very, it doesn't sit well with me. Yeah. I look at my dad. I always teased him all the time because he's very negative about Dallas, just like, oh, tease again, this, that, and the other. And I always have to defend them, being like, man, they lost to San Fran. They're a much better team. They played them close, is what it is. But I cannot defend the path that they were on to at the very least get back to the NFC Championship game. And losing the way they did to a team that was much inferior to them.
Right.
To an inferior coach, quarterback, all that stuff. And you got outplayed from the jump at all positions. And yeah. So that's just kind of I'm just done defending them.
Yeah.
And I've always been able to look at them from an objective point of view. But even though that I can acknowledge that they still have one of the 5 best rosters in the NFC, I would not pick them to go far beyond a wild card round. It sounds like, as it's currently constructed, they're done. Their window's closed, and if it was ever open to begin with.
Right.
And this current rendition of the team is no more, and we'll just kind of see where they go and if they can even be competitive while Jerry Jones is still around.
Well, I think it's a reasonable thought. That's how we're going to have to wrap this one up. We love you, Tyron.
Yeah.
We do. And we hope that...
Go to the Chiefs and win a ring.
Yeah, go somewhere and do something great. I mean, no one's going to get mad at you for going and making your money this time and winning and, not getting stuck in the wild card round. So we really appreciate everybody coming and watching and being a part of this, getting to hear a little bit about what's going on in the NFL right now, good things and bad things, and kind of just, working towards the draft and working towards, fantasy football and all the fun stuff that we're going to get into. We won't do a mock draft. We won't do a mock draft 2.0 until after free agency is over. We're going to do some positional videos. We might do some mock the mocks where we go and mock everybody else's mocks.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we want to do, and instead of using time, because what's the point of doing a mock right now before free agency or what have you? We're going to do that into March, probably is a good estimation for that. But right now, everybody's freaking out about the combine. Let's go tease people that are picking JC Latham at 6.
Yeah.
So
yep, absolutely.
We have several things coming out very soon. Please tell me what you guys think. The buzz around the team. What do you want to see? What matchmakings do you want to see? Players that are available. There's plenty of news that is coming out even before this video gets released that we might not have touched on. Tell us about it. What are some of your exciting things? Was I too rough on the Cowboys? Was I too light on them? Many more things. Like, subscribe. Look at our prospect video that we just did. Look at all of our division videos that we've created last week. Please go like, comment, subscribe.
Yep.
And do all those good things. Support us where you can and join the community that we're going to build from here.
Yeah, talk to it. Also, I want to hear what kind of things y'all want to watch. I mean, we're making this up as we go.
Yeah.
We did the Outlook videos. We're gonna do the positional ranking videos. We do mock the mock. We're gonna talk about some pro days. But what do y'all want to see? I mean, shoot, I'll make a video about something cool. If y'all have something.
Once the draft ends at the end of April. Before that, and then before best ball starts in July, we got 2 months of dead space that we're going to fill up.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do a lot of fun things. I have a lot of ideas with games that we can play, interactive stuff that we're going to go back and forth on. Maybe bring some guests in to do on that note. So if you have any ideas, let us know. We're always open to just kind of growing the way we can. So just let us know.
Yeah, plus all of our educational videos will start coming out pretty soon. So we'll start doing those. So if you have anybody that wants to learn about football and wants to, understand the intricate ways that how football works, we're going to start doing those things too. So go watch those too. But we appreciate y'all being here. And like Cam said, like, comment, subscribe, go see all our stuff. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Y'all take care, guys. Thank you.